Hello and welcome to our winners interview. I am joined by Adam Schulman, aka Law Warrior, the champion of the recent Cold Hunt Expedition 5K Open. First of all, Adam, congratulations on your win. I got to cover it myself. Was really impressed by your deck and your play. Your deck was something that was kind of, I think, off the radar a little bit. So congratulations on a very powerful and unorthodox win last weekend.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm glad to be with you.
So, before we dive into all of the tournament, let's talk a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, your life outside of Eternal, just a little bit of sort of your life and personality outside of this game.
Sure. So I'm originally from near Philadelphia, but I've been down in the DC area for about 20 years since undergrad. And I live in Alexandria, Northern Virginia, and I work as an attorney for a nonprofit organization and called the Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute. And we do First Amendment. We sue the government if they violate First Amendment rights, or that's one of the main things we do. And the other main thing we do is we object on behalf of consumers to unfair class action settlements where the lawyers are taking all the money and leaving class members with coupons or nothing. It's
interesting. So, in regards to your First Amendment work, how similar or different would you describe your work to kind of like what someone imagines the ACLU kind of profile looking like?
Yeah, we do we would, some of our cases would be similar. They, if a state passes a law that, for example, yesterday we filed a complaint against a California law that was just passed, which basically establishes a bubble zone outside of vaccination sites, so that people are not allowed to approach within 30 feet of somebody seeking to enter a vaccination site. If they want to pass out a pamphlet in support of vaccines, they can't do that. And that's in fact what our client wants to do. So yeah, we do cases like that. ACLU would do similar cases.
Cool. So backing up a little bit, when you say outside of Philly, this is something very close to the design team, because Andrew Beckstrom, my colleague, identifies as having grown up outside of Philadelphia, but he's actually from New Jersey. So so I guess the question is, what side of the bridge did you grow up on?
No, I grew up in Pennsylvania. Yeah. I was Western suburbs. Now I think it's technically legit if he's from Cherry Hill or close to the bridge to call himself from the suburbs of Philly, but yeah, we try to dissociate to New Jersey as much as possible.
Yeah, Cherry Hill's exactly right. So that's like the line where you're allowed to do it, but it's still, as someone from Central Jersey, it still raises my ire a little bit. So I was curious if you were on the Jersey side IDing as Philly or actually from PA. So good answer. So setting aside kind of the personal life stuff, how long have you been playing Eternal? How'd you get started in the game? What really jumped out at you at first?
So I've been playing for several years. I think I started in 2017 is what I'm thinking. It might have been 2016 even. I don't know. It's a while ago at this point. And before that, I played Hearthstone, and then I was looking for a different game. I don't know why, but maybe I was on the Reddit and somebody recommended Eternal, so I jumped right into Eternal. And I haven't been disappointed. I don't play Hearthstone anymore, but I still play Eternal.
So how much of it was sort of just the game itself was really appealing to you versus the organized play system maybe being a bit more accessible, or was it a combination of stuff?
I would say mostly it's the amazing free-to-play experience that Eternal provides. I liked the complexity. So it's a little more of a complex game in my view than Hearthstone, which I enjoyed. Magic the Gathering is something I had always wished that I had done a little bit more seriously. I played like very casually when I was younger, but never really got into it. And I was like, well, this is a good way to jump into a similar game where I don't have to commit a lot of investment beforehand.
Cool. So you said you went back to all the way back to 2017. Is there like a particular format or card that stands out to you as being really influential for your experience, or something that uh, really got you hooked on the game?
Well, my favorite format's League for sure. No doubt about that. Especially, and actually, to be more precise, week one of League is what I really enjoy most. When you have to dig deep. Um, do you want to play 3-4 faction and get screwed on power occasionally, or do you really want to play some garbage cards? And so I really enjoy that. That's what sort of keeps things new for me, and keeps me wanting to play.
So do you find yourself enjoying um, formats, whether it be constructed or draft, where there's like, let's say, volatility and power level? It's not just about identifying the and best cards and slapping them all together, but actually trying to cobble something functional out of the scraps. Is that something that you enjoy?
Yes, yeah, I do enjoy that. I enjoy that quite a bit.
Pivoting a little bit, we have a question here that's now very interesting for me, given that your responses here is, what's the bad card that you can't quit play? I assume that you have a wider net for this sort of answer than maybe the
Oh
average
man.
constructed tournament winner that we interview.
Oh man. Um, this is a tough one because I do have, I've got experience playing with a lot of bad cards. Um,
Me and you both.
I don't know. You're stumping me on this one, actually. I'm there's no card when I'm trying to build a deck. I don't shoot. I don't like. I'm not trying to put bad. Yeah, my deck was obviously very cobbled together and not fine tuned or anything like that. But I'm not trying to put bad cards in it.
Sure. So I'll give you my answer to this question, and
Yeah,
then maybe this will provide some inspiration.
sure.
Mine is recombobulate. I can't quit
Okay.
that one. And I think part of it is like there's a moral hazard involved, because the times where it's good, it's so absurd. But it's often just the game's not about that, or it's too much power to play or whatever. But when I'm playing live at the office, which I do, during lunch breaks and stuff like that, anytime it's going to be good, especially if it's on the top of my deck, I like call over my coworkers. I'm like, check this out, check out what's about to happen over
Right.
here. So the fact that the ceiling is really high on that one, I think is part of the reason that I can't quit it.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, my favorite, I don't know if it can't quit it because I think it's still a reasonable deck, but World Pyre isn't probably my favorite card. And part of that is that when that was back in Expedition, I built that deck with my five. He's now 6, but my 5-year-old son at the time, because he's attracted to obviously large power cost cards, which you can't do in an ordinary deck. So, I mean, I still have fun playing that on Throne regularly. It's probably not top tier, but it's enjoyable.
So my son also watches me play. He's 4 now, and so a lot of the mechanics are, he can't necessarily follow that, can't read yet, but he has identified. He is aware that even-handed golden is a really powerful card. So anytime I play it, he gets really excited, and anytime my opponent plays it, he gets really upset. So I'm optimistic by the time that my son is your son's age, that he'll be into it. But right now, all
Well,
he
that's
knows is that
advanced
even-hand golden.
because, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're just looking, it looks like, what is this puny 1/1? He must be nothing. But then, he knows enough to know that hand advantage matters, card advantage matters. So.
Yeah, he keeps telling me he keeps telling me you got to kill that robot anytime my opponent's got one. I try to explain to him, it's like, dude, the damage is already done here. I mean, I could kill it or whatever, but that's not really what the thing's about.
So in that World Pyre deck, I do play a weird card that I've never seen anybody else play, which is the oh shoot, I don't even remember the name of it. The 8 cost red, where you need like 4 or 5 red power, and it does 5 damage to 2 targets. It's a 10
Oh yeah,
5.
yeah, right. Yep. The name is also escaping me,
Yeah.
but I do know the card you're talking about. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't play red in my deck, so that's only coming out when I hit World Pyre. But I sort of enjoy that one. I guess I can't quit that one. So I guess that's my answer for that question.
So, how did you prepare for this tournament? I have some very I'm very interested in your deck. We'll get into that in a minute, but leading up to the weekend, maybe the couple weeks in advance, whatever, once the format was kind of settled in. How did you know ahead of time that you were planning on playing in the Open, and then what was your preparation like, kind of leading up to it?
To be honest, it was sort of a lark that I entered it all. I was sort of free that Friday, and I was like, maybe I'll enter. This was only the second tournament I played in,
Hmm.
um, and the first one being the last Expedition Open before. So I didn't really prepare too much going in, other than I knew I liked Praxis, because of auto tread against smaller decks, and Sandstorm Titan, obviously, but Shoal Custodian mostly against what I was seeing in the meta.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm also playing a different build of Praxis on in Expedition on live right now. And after watching your tournaments, I've come back to the game fairly recently. I got rehired in July, but I like playing on my free to play account to sort of keep in touch with that experience. And after watching your tournament, I was like, oh man, I gotta play with Shoal Custodian. This card's just too ripped. But it's in a micro campaign, so now I gotta like grind up to 25K gold to be able to get the Shoal Custodian set to the
Right,
deck. So,
right.
but my thoughts on your deck. It's interesting. At the beginning of the broadcast, I sort of talked about, well, Waxing Moon, Waning Moon is all over the place. A lot of these decks also play Black Sky Harbinger for obvious reasons. And so, are the beatdown decks going to just be focused on being as fast as possible? Because do you really want to play a 6, 7, 8 turn game in a field where a lot of people have Waxing Moon alongside Black Sky Harbinger? And your deck is very much the opposite approach. I mean, it is aggressive. It is low to the ground. It's got League Explorer and a lot of things you sort of associate with playing a more aggressive deck. But it is not just about running someone down as fast as possible. It is a little bit slower as far as the beatdown decks go, which was not my expectation coming into the tournament. And you ended up winning the whole thing. So can you I guess can you speak to, I guess, specifically the Waxing Moon, Black Sky Harbinger? How much was that sort of accounted for in the deck that you decided to build, and sort of what your perception of the metagame was leading up to the weekend?
Yeah, no, I thought that was a definite consideration. That was one thing I was thinking about. I saw the article that you had written where you suggested Shatterglass Mage, as a response to that, and really in a very moon have if I knew that it was going to be as large of a percentage as it was, I might have included that. But I felt like I could deal with it based on having what's the name of that? The 2 cost relic removal in the market. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hold on one second here. The disjunction.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So rather than go with the Shatterglass package, and so I really, you know, the deck was heavily focused on trying to get. I wasn't afraid of the late game as long as it had the right tools. Like, so Javon is an amazing tool in this deck because there's so many 4 drops we're running. Um, it's almost better, if you feel like the game's going longer, taking just a draw of Javon and potentially getting the play if you hit a minion. And it's a very minion heavy deck, obviously, too.
Yeah, and Siobhan in particular is one where, well, even if you're playing against a control deck, then the attack trigger matters a lot potentially, and so that's a very powerful way of sort of splitting the difference between being all in and trying to play like a much deeper game. I'm also curious about some of the stuff that's going on in the fringes of the deck, let's call it.
Okay.
Can you speak to the one copy of Azrog Streetbreaker? I was a little surprised by the inclusion of this, again, just because the deck is so focused on being low to the ground, but it was also uh, totally busted for you several times on camera that I watched. So I'm interested what sort of caused you to go with one copy here. If you ran the event back, would you consider a second one, or were you happy with just the one?
Yeah, I might. So there's a lot of, with the ramp that the deck has, you got to be able to use the power in certain ways. And like obviously Javon triggers, and using the runes in their form of their what is it? What is it? The not is it spellcast or their amplify version?
Five. Yeah.
Right, their amplify version to use stuff like that. So I wanted to have something up there. I didn't want to have the full 4 set because this deck, if you don't get a good start, it's not gonna do well. So I felt like I couldn't justify that. You know, thinking back on it, I might put a second copy in it instead of the speaking circle. Because I didn't know that OZL would be as prevalent as it was. And then sort of it's just, you know, you get one spell off it and then it gets hit by OZL. You know, you can make use of that one spell, but I think a second copy of Azrog might have been better there.
So I really like an element that I like about your deck is okay, so it's very low to the ground, right? You have a lot of cheap plays and it's ostensibly a very aggressive deck, but you also have logistics expert, open way supplier, power cell. A lot of those cards are very good for getting off to fast starts, but again, you're playing an aggressive deck. So how much can you really use the extra power? And then the fringes of the deck are filled out with like, okay, so there's these really powerful forwards in Sandstorm Titan and Shoal Custodian. So you have these very explosive openings if you accelerate. You have the sketches and runes. So if you happen to draw a little bit too much power, it's not ideal, but you at least have things to do with 5 or 6 power. That's a really interesting approach of you know, most of the aggressive decks that we've seen have competitive success in Eternal are just, you know, it's a lot of, you know, cheap Aegis units and charge units, you know, sort of speaking to your favorite cards being Initiative of the Sands and things like that. Do you think that this is sort of like objectively the best approach for the format right now, or is this something that just like very comfortably fits your play style, or is it kind of a mix of the two?
Ooh, that's a good, you know, that's a good question. In one sense, I would have had some bad matchups. I managed to avoid, for example, Rakano, and what's the name of that 4-drop? Varric or something like that. The 2 red, 2 green.
Oh, the summon kill a multi-faction.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that card would destroy Shoal Custodian. You put it back in there, kill you. And there were things I really liked about this matchup in the meta. So auto tread I thought is extremely strong because you're seeing so many vine grafters, so many other units that are sticky that it can help you go through that. So I think it was sort of it was a mix, but it does
Sure.
suit my play style.
What I really like about this deck, the structure of it is it's really focused on getting out in front really early on, but also has ways of um, hedging against drawing a little bit too much power, which is going to happen kind of naturally when you're playing so many 1 and 2 cost cards, but also play with a lot of power acceleration as well.
So yeah, Amphitheater also is an example of a card that really suits my play style. I really enjoy playing with sites and extracting value from them too. So being able to potentially get Amphitheater on 2, and then playing a slow to slow them down even more.
Well, also, I mean, this deck's also kind of putting people in the squeeze too, right? As far as your sites go, like you have extraneous stuff to block with. Um, they're probably on the defense, so they're like, do they want to attack with their 1 unit and give up a blocker? And you could just chump block with one of your accelerators that you don't need anymore, or do they sit back and let the amphitheater run? Like, again, that's a spot where I think the deck is really well structured, where the opponent doesn't have a lot of good options because they need to play defense, and you have things that can block pretty easily past a certain point. The praise of your deck aside, what was the like play testing like? I mean, you said you sort of threw this together, I believe was your comment earlier. How much sort of work went into iterating this list prior to the open?
So I had used a similar list that was even much less refined for the last open. Before, when Sandstorm Titan was not in the meta. or was not in expedition rather. So I felt like, well, that's an increase in power level. Actually, after that expedition, what I did was I moved to I was playing Xenon for a while, having a lot of success at Xenon, and then the nerf for what's the 5/5, whatever the legendary is that got moved to 6 cost, really hurt that deck. Or at least the way I played it. I know that certain people, and in fact, my first round opponent adjusted by just instead of using 4 copies of that, he went to the slug instead, which I was trying out, but I just didn't think it was as working as well as Praxis. And I don't know, for some reason, I'm very I like the Praxis blueprint a lot in that deck. I don't know why, but I think it's very you can get it's a huge threat at the end to refill.
Oh, I think it's one of the sickest cards in the deck that which my deck is like I do not think optimized by any stretch. But you just get into the spot where you have all these extraneous things floating around that don't really do anything. And even just go like sack my blueprints, a space bar, and they're kind of priced into blocking the 1/1s because they don't want you to draw, and just being able to punch through,
Yeah.
6-7 damage with your stuff that really can't break the stalemate. I have found to be really really strong. And then also sometimes you play against people that are just all on removal, and you just rip 3 cards and your 1/1s are still left over. So I found the blueprints to be a really powerful incentive to be playing Praxis. How did your Friday run go? I don't know your record leading up to the top 64, but do you have a recollection of your record, or were you like kind of on the bubble to making the open, or did you sort of cruise through your placement matches?
I think I was 19-9, and I might have lost 1 or 2 toward the end. So I felt like I may have even been 19-7 before losing the last 2. So at 19, I felt pretty secure. The first when I had played the first tournament that I had mentioned, the last Open, I was 18-10 right on the bubble. And I think I got in as number 60 or something like that to day 2. So I felt a little bit, better not, knowing with a couple of games left that it seems like I was safe.
Cool. So you have a story that's a little bit different in terms of your arc as a competitive player, which is you have been playing Eternal for a relatively long time. You said 2017, the game was live essentially in 2016, so pretty close to the beginning. But that this was only the second tournament that you've played in. So how has your process been for like do you play on the ladder a lot? What's been your sort of progress in terms of feeling like you've improved as a player? If you I guess if you feel that way at all, like what's been your process for leveling
Hmm.
up, checking back in to see if you're more or less successful than you were in the previous season or the previous month? What's your um sort of process looking like, and absent playing in a bunch of tournaments?
And that's a good question. I feel like the first moment that I can remember where I was like, well, I might be decent at this was making masters. I guess, one of the first months I had played, because when I played Hearthstone, I only made legend rank there a few times. And I still remember the first deck I made masters with an Eternal was mono red. It's a aggressive, so still have some fond feelings for that deck. And so I guess that was a level up moment. It's sort of not noticeable. If maybe I have improved, but it doesn't. There's nothing that stands out as a noticeable moment for when it happened. Maybe I could have had similar results if I'd played in tournaments before. I don't know.
I mean, something that really stood out to me while I was covering the event was, often you can sort of basket players into sort of 2 camps, which is strategic or tactical. People who have like a really good top level approach to a particular matchup, but maybe the details on the table get a little bit lost. And then the other way, which is maybe their philosophy for a matchup is not ideal, but their play on the table is really strong. And you seem to me to have a blend of both of those things going at the same time. Of the deck and sort of your approach in the matchup seem very strategically strong, and also your play on the table, particularly with Shoal Custodian, because that's like a tricky card to set up, whether you're just like put on the front foot or trying to set up a spot where you're getting a little bit more out of it. Um, do you sort of look at your Hearthstone playing as sort of a, I mean, I think that's a game that puts a lot of pressure on you to be good at both. Or is that something that I mean, this might be a hard question to answer, but is that just a natural thing for you in games? Or is that something that you maybe built up with your Hearthstone playing or something else?
Um, I'm not. That is a difficult question. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, I feel like what's improved the on the table tactical game has improved from playing more. Obviously, I did have sort of a sense of what I was looking for in each matchup. Since the deck lists are known here, I was definitely aware going into each matchup what I wanted to hit, what I was afraid of, what I was looking for. What would it look like in a long game? Could I potentially win a longer game or not? For example, in the semifinal, I think I was playing A Boss, and he was on a very aggressive Sky Crag,
Mhm.
and so I felt like my chances in the longer game there were better than in other matchups.
No, I think that was, I mean, that really summed up the tournament from my perspective, was the top four and top two, because you played against a Skycry deck in the top four that was very aggressive, and you had tools, Sandstorm Titan, and some bigger plays. If you could sort of make your way out of the early turns, that you would be advantaged because you just have stronger individual cards. And then in the finals, you were definitely the aggressive deck. You were playing against something that was much better set up to play a deeper game, in my opinion, than you were.
Mm,
And so that's something that's going to put a premium on, your acceleration, things like League Explorer, just getting on top of the game, and then maybe having like one powerful card to finish the game off before it pivots. And so getting to see that like in real time with the highest stakes available was really cool, because when I look at your list, what I see is like, oh, I'm trying to thread the needle here. I want to be flexible. I want to have a different way to play against different opponents who are kind of at the polar ends, and then watching it sort of manifest in the semifinals and finals was really cool. Sort of proof of concept, like right in front of my eyes, at least.
right. Hidden Crusader is actually an extremely difficult card for my deck to deal with. And so I think as I recall, I had played my opponent in the finals during the initial round robin, and I think I beat him, but I think it was close. I got another one of those aggressive starts against him, which is what what's necessary to win in that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, my own experience is playing Praxis. I found Hidden Crusader to be one of the tougher cards, because if you're playing a long game, the card matters, but you have enough like small units that the 2/2 matters as well. So your opponent's just got like a lot of like good. There's a variety of bad options. There's no good one. And as you mentioned, yeah, Shoal Custodian's not the thing you want there. So now that you're qualified for the World Championships, first of all, can you speak a little bit to what that means to you, and then secondly, what do you imagine your process is going to be like preparing for that event? Do you have a group of people you're going to be working with, or do you plan on keeping it solo, or what are your thoughts there?
That's a great question. It means a lot to me. I mean, it's really exciting. So I think I'm going to put a lot more time prepping for Worlds, I expect. And as far as who I will prepare with, I have, since I've been playing the game for several years, I have a decently sized friends list, some of whom I chat with. I don't have an official playtest group. I notice a lot of the other competitors are part of teams, and I'm not. So I'm not sure. I probably just have some one-on-one conversations there, thinking about ideas with some of my buddies in game. I guess more generally, what would you advise for a first-time player at a high-level world championship?
Mm. I think my answer to that would be, it's a pretty small field, and it's probably going to people that you're familiar with. and the matchups are going to be like very high stakes. So I think I would approach it as a combination of what's the metagame sort of broadly? What do I anticipate in general things to look like? While also sort of honing in on the specific known tendencies of particular
of
players in the
players.
field. Um, it's easy to go too far in either direction, I think, but I think you want to try to thread the needle there a little bit of um, it's sort of being sensitive to the metagame at large while also trying to do a little research on the particulars of the players in the field. Because it's a narrow field, 16 people, a lot of them will be high profile streamers or regular top finishers in our events. And I
Right.
think you can start stringing together a little bit of a narrative about what they're likely to do or gravitate towards. And then sort of on the other side of that is, like if you think that you have tendencies that are publicly identifiable,
Right.
you can pivot, deviate off of that a little bit. There could be equity there too. But I wouldn't
Right.
rabbit hole on any one angle. It's just trying to be aware of the sum of all of it, I guess would be my advice.
Right. Well, one thing I learned between my first and second experience is you don't want to have. So in my first run with Praxis, I had, oh, what's the name of that card? The stealth 3 cost red that exhausts 2 enemies.
Oh, the mind fire stealth unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple copies of that, but I didn't have any other. So you don't want to play one stealth in an open deck list where they know what that's going to be exactly when you're playing it. You're losing the advantage of it. Whereas on ladder, a lot of people were playing that 2/1 at that time that draws a card. So it was sort of unexpected.
Yeah, the Sandy Scorcher is the one you're speaking to. The double damage reveal for mind fire.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that
I'm
was one of
actually
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
That was one of the amendments I made to get rid of that. That was not, with given that it was known what it was, it wasn't helping me out in games.
I'm curious. The stealth units in particular, I think, are going to be really interesting for a worlds format. And we saw one competitor do pretty well in the event last weekend with a combination of a Zindel and Subversion Slug. And I wonder how much, maybe you just play those two cards because you want to play them, but also the way you answer each of those cards is very different. And so with open deck lists, is something like playing one or two copies of Subversion Slug alongside your four Zindels more appealing because people will know. Whereas on the latter, maybe you just play your Zindels and call it a day or whatever. I'm curious to
Mhm.
see if that actually manifests in practice, but it can only move the dial in that direction. It certainly doesn't. It certainly doesn't cause you to play only one stealth unit. So we'll see. I'm
Right.
interested.
Right.
All
Well, I
right.
appreciate I appreciate the advice.
Well, floor is open for another question if you want it.
I guess a more general question about Eternal is what are your this doesn't have to be on the record either. Um, what are your general thoughts about the health of the game right now?
So I have an interesting, perspective on this because I was away from Direwolf for about 18 months and then returned to the company in July. So I've had the experience of um, almost like a lapsed player, because I wasn't playing Eternal very much during the time that I wasn't working on the project, but I still have my live account from back years ago, and so it's an interesting like I get to have that experience in real time. And I'm sure that experience isn't unique of like, players hop in and out of games. You come back on, you've missed some sets. What does it look like? The thing that jumped out at me the most is like, this game is so fun. And there's some amount of like, uh, I, you know, I come back, I haven't worked on these sets, and I have these expectations of like, oh, I'm going to see all this stuff that I would I wouldn't have approved or whatever. And I was playing these games, I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Like they've done like such a good job on all this stuff.
Right.
And there's also been some experiences I've had as a lapsed player where it's like, oh, we could probably modify a few things about various parts of the client to make like the hopping in experience like smoother and easier. So
Right.
paying some attention to that. My feeling on the health of the game and like the product in general is like the game is really fun. And if we can change a couple of things to make it a little bit easier to hop on if you're a new or returning player, we could see like tremendous growth. I very, very, very firmly believe that.
Right. Since I've played continuously, so I'm completely lacking that perspective of what it's like to join as a new player. The thing that I think that you guys do great is your nimbleness about updating, nerfing, and buffing cards that are underplayed. You do a stellar job at that. So whoever's controlling that, my kudos to them.
My perspective is basically like there's a lot to be gained from information. So sometimes trying things that are a little bit different, where the downside risk is maybe we have to walk something back, or maybe things are a little disrupted in a way that's not great for a moment in time. Like those are the costs. But we get information on how to do our jobs a lot better. Is like that's like the secret sauce right there. So there are places where we are doing things a little bit differently in some spots, and I think we'll continue to do so compared to how we have historically. Some of that is because we have a sense of we've identified an area of improvement and we should drive on it, and some of it is there's some ambiguity here right now about what's the best path or what are the pros and cons. So just try something if the risk is low, get that information, and then apply that information to future decisions. So I'm trying to be in this mindset of like, let's just sort of not like table flip the project. I think the game is really fun. I think like the core structure, the core loop is really, really good. But if there's some stuff on the periphery that maybe is an impediment to a new or returning player, or just places where we could be like a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother, a little bit more efficient, whatever the things are, let's just see what it looks like. And if it turns out that the players don't respond well to it, that's really great information to have. And if it turns out the players really like it, that's also really great information to have. So I think there's we're trying experiment is too strong of a word, I would say, because the things we want to do are all anchored in, philosophy and experience and whatever, but just trying to be more willing and open-minded about seeing areas for potential improvement and seeing what it looks like. We have a really like a tight, talented team composed of a lot of smart people, and the ability to like move resources around, try things is just so different here than at some of the bigger studios I've worked with. And that we're having a lot of conversations in that space, and I we have a lot of things kind of slated for the short and medium term that I'm really excited about, and I think could specifically kind of speaking to the growth of the game. Like I think I very firmly believe our best years are in front of us.
Great. I'm wishing you all the success with that because I'd like to be able to play when my son, when he starts to, I mean, he plays a little bit now. He dabbles. He has his favorite decks, but he's when he really starts getting serious, I'd like for it to still exist, you know.
Yeah, me too. Maybe our kids could meet up in the ladder in a few years.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, congratulations. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to watching you compete in the World Championships in a little bit.
Thanks, Patrick. Me too.
Take care.